I've been a YouTuber for 7 years, and today, I'm in Venezuela to chase a scene that I have never recorded before. A real exorcism by a religious priest. This priest, Father Bernard, had formed an exorcism team which consisted of 9 people. I happened to know one member of his team, and was introduced to Father Bernard. He explained the situation, and I immediately thought, wow, I've never heard of this situation before. This is no Hollywood movie. The subject was a 7-year-old girl who's been possessed, but this will be the 6th exorcism on her. That's right, the 6th exorcism. Exorcism number 6, can you guys imagine that? So what happened to the last 5? Well, they all failed, and all the priests who did the exorcism on her were dead on sight. So were their assistants, all dead. The priest said that I can come along and record their activity at my own risk. I asked the priest what are the chances that he will succeed, and he replied,
"Honestly, I don't know."
I asked him what he knows about the demon that possessed the little girl. The priest replied with a sharp look,
"You tell me. A demon that had defeated us 5 times in a row. What does it tell you?"
I immediately had my second thought about making this video. The priest then said,
"But we've learned from the mistakes of previous 5 exorcism, and we're not making the same mistakes again."
And with that, I decided to go ahead with the video. It's a do or die video. If I make it, it'll be one of the greatest YouTube video ever. If I'm dead, I'd probably be a YouTuber legend. But my 2 assistants decided not to go with me, and I respect their decision. I wouldn't want to put other people's lives in danger just because of my YouTube channel. In the next 3 days, we arrived at a church in a small town in the middle of the country. The possessed girl had been occupying the local church for more than a month after her last exorcism. The area around the church was off-limit by the police. Police cars and military trucks surrounded the church. It turned out that she had killed the priest who was also the caretaker of the church. Other than the priest himself, 4 policemen, 3 locals, and 7 soldiers were dead in the past month as they tried to storm the church and capture her. We observed the church from outside. I already had my camera recording. What the team sees, my viewers will see it too. Father Bernard then decided that we all should head to the hotel and get a rest. Seemed like it's gonna be a long, tough day tomorrow. The next day, we head back to the church. This time, we enter the church. I was the last person to enter and holding my camera. I wished my 2 assistants were here because there were many angles to cover the church. The girl, or the demon, seemed to have anticipated our visit. She was sitting on the altar, observing us with a smile, as if welcoming us. Then she said,
Esne omnes parati ad mortem.
It means, are you all ready to die? And that was not a voice of a 7-year-old girl. I thought to myself, oh shit, I shouldn't have come here. She let out a long giggle. Instead of replying, Father Bernard gave us a command to spread out. 3 people went to the left aisle of the church, 3 to the right, and 3 together with Father Bernard stayed on the center aisle. I went to the left aisle because it offers better lighting. Father Bernard then said,
"You've killed my friends and many other people. Today is the last day you live inside this girl, and you will go back to hell."
She laughed in high pitch as if she was entertained by Father Bernard's threat. For another 3 minutes the 2 of them spoke to each other. Father Bernard spoke in English while the girl spoke in Latin, French, Chinese, and some other languages I couldn't identify. Suddenly, she screamed. She held her neck and looked at us. It turned out that someone from my aisle shot a tranquilizer on her neck. I was briefed by Father Bernard this morning about what they're going to do, but apparently they had kept the details out from me. The demon quickly identified the guy who shot her. She pointed her finger at him, and he floated in the air with his body bent backward. Then she made a fist out of her hand, and the guy was choking. Father Bernard and the team on the center and right aisle charged towards the girl, but there was something invisible holding them back. Luckily, the tranquilizer began to work. She was fighting it, but she was losing against the drug. She was struggling to keep the man afloat, and we could see the man was able to breathe a little. Finally, she couldn't fight it. She dropped unconscious on the altar, but the man who was quite high up in the air fell on the floor. The man hit his head directly onto the floor and became unconscious immediately. The team moved quickly. 3 members evacuated the unconscious one out of the church while the rest tied the girl on the altar and prepared for the exorcism. The tranquilizer is said to work for up to 10 minutes. I immediately set up my camera positions. I still have 2 more tripods and a spare camera in the van. I decided not to spare any expenses. Because this is it. I'm making one of my greatest videos for my channel. In less than 10 minutes, the girl was conscious again. Father Bernard with his team, already in their exorcism robes, began chanting verses from the Bible, occasionally splashing holy water and placing the cross on her forehead. Unlike the exorcism that we saw in the horror movies, the girl wasn't groaning or screaming in pain. Although she was twisting and bending her body, she was laughing as if she was being tickled. She was laughing and saying something in Latin with different voices. When Father Bernard placed the cross on her forehead, it didn't burn her skin. I thought to myself, this demon's gotta be a big one. After all, she defeated 5 exorcisms before us and killed all the exorcism team. That thought worried me because if this exorcism failed, then we're all going to die. Father Bernard and his team grew louder with their chants. The echoes and reverberations in the church made the scene even more horrific. I had 4 cameras recording, 3 in static positions and 1 in my hand. I was very careful in moving around, especially on the podium near the altar. At times, I could see her staring right at me through my camera. I was scared to death. I struggled to keep calm, but always reminded myself about the greatest video that I'm making. Then, the church benches and other furnitures began to shake vertically, making banging noises against the floor. The benches were made from heavy woods, and there were around 24 of them. It disrupted the concentration of the exorcist team, and I was terrified. They looked around in different directions as they were trying to figure out what the demon is doing to the church. Then, we heard the girl saying,
Tempus moriendi prope est.
"The time to die is near." That's what she was saying. The team resumed their chanting. Father Bernard pressed the Bible onto the girl's chest. The demon laughed even louder. Suddenly, all of the church benches floated in the air. The team was again distracted. As they watched at the floating benches, some of the benches flew and landed on the church doors, effectively blocking all of the church exits. Father Bernard opened his Bible, read a verse out loud, followed by his team chanting. I was so scared that I pulled back, stepping away from the podium. I retreated to the left aisle. But with the altar being in high position, I had no good angle for recording. Father Bernard had already his cross and Bible on the girl, but they seemed to have no effect. The team was well prepared as their faces showed no doubts or fear. They were calm, but they may be running out of option. Maybe the time to die is near. But Father Bernard seemed to have one more weapon. He put his stole on the girl's face. And then the girl said,
Tempus venerit.
"The time has come," she said. Suddenly there was an earthquake, which later I found out it wasn't an earthquake. It was the doing of the demon. shaking the church and the ground it was on. Lights, ceiling, and church ornaments began collapsing. The statue of Christ fell from the wall. Then, a few thick blocks of wood from the roof collapsed to the floor. Father Bernard looked up and around the church, as well as his other team member. Then he told everyone to evacuate. I abandoned my 3 cameras and head to the blocked exit through the left aisle while the exorcist team ran through the center aisle. But as we were halfway through, the church completely collapsed. Something hit my head so hard that I went unconscious. I suddenly heard a sound. A familiar sound. And the smell. It's also a familiar smell. Where was I? I opened my eyes, and I slowly realized that I wasn't in the church. I looked around. I was in the hospital. A nurse was standing nearby. Realizing that I was conscious, she said something in Spanish and called the doctor. The doctor came and explained that I've been at the hospital for about a day and was lucky to survive with minor injuries. Survive? What about the rest? The doctor said everyone else was dead, crushed under the rubble of the church. The guy who shot the demon with a tranquilizer died at the hospital where he suffered a massive hemorrhage of the brain. A police detective showed up shortly after and began asking me questions. I answered everything I know, and I also told him to watch the recordings from my cameras. The detective then said that all the recordings were blank, except for 5 seconds where the girl was sitting on the altar. What? Did he just say my YouTube project were all gone? Nothing? I was glad to be alive, but I was also disappointed about my project. Then the detective asked the whereabouts of the girl. I was struck, completely surprised. The detective said there were no signs of her among the church rubble. The restraints were all in place and no one opened them, but the girl wasn't on the altar. The detective then left the room, and I began to contemplate the outcome of this. My YouTube project failed, 9 people dead, a church destroyed, an exorcism failed, and a demon on the loose. I then had the scariest imagination. I was there. I was at the exorcism. The demon saw me there. I'm not staying in this country 1 second longer, and that's what I did. I left the country the very next day.
Hi, welcome to our YouTube channel, Souls Around You, and thank you for listening to our horror stories. We have more stories in our channel, so if you like it, please subscribe and press the like button. Your subscription and likes are very rewarding for us.